You're listening to The Hikam with Shaykh Zahir Bacchus of the Lotri Foundation. In this podcast, Shaykh Zahir explains the aphorisms from Ibn Ata'illah's famous book of wisdoms, Al-Hikam Al-Ata'iyah, a classical manual of spiritual development. Visit seekershub.org for online courses, our reliable answer service, and engaging media.
وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما بفضلك وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Ameen. So we're doing and reading through the Hikam of Ibn Ata'illah, Shaykh Ibn Ata'illah, concerning the spiritual growth of the servant, getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and purifying those vessels or those limbs that need purification in order to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in order to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is in the light of what these statements, these sentences of wisdom that he's conveying. So he says, قال رضي الله عنه النور جند القلب كما أن الظلم جند النفس فإذا أراد الله أن ينصر عبده أمداه بجنود الأنوار وقطع عنه مدة الظلم والأقيار. So he says that the lights are the army of the heart. The light is the army of the heart, just as darkness is the army of the self, of the nafs, of the lower self. So he says, فَإِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ أَنْ يَنْصُرُ عَبْدَهُ. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to help His servant triumph or succeed, أَمْدَعَهُ بِجُنُودِ الْأَنْوَارِ or أَمَدَّهُ بِجُنُودِ الْأَنْوَارِ, and He helps him or He secures him with the army of light. He extends to him the army of light. وَقَطَعَ عَنْهُ مَدَدَ الظُّلْمِ وَالْأَقْيَارِ, and cuts off the aid of darknesses and any besides him. He cuts off for him the army, the darknesses, the aid of the darknesses and any besides him. And so the anwar, the nur that he's talking about, the nur is the light that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings, and it is the light in which one has it's the unifying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that one in the heart. And this is the place, the light is the army of the heart, he says. And the light is the army of the heart because the light unifies or is unifying Allah with certainty. This is the light in the heart, and it comes as he says, a jund, as an army, because what does it do? It strengthens the heart. Light in the heart strengthens the heart. Strengthen the heart in what? In belief in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it strengthens the heart in that it strengthens the certainty. It strengthens the certainty of the heart. And he says, what does he say? He says, كَمَا أَنَّ الظُّلْمَ جُنْدُ النَّفْسِ. Just like the darkness is, dhulma is the army of the self. Darkness is the army of the self. So both of them being army, light being the army of the qalb, of the heart, and dhulma, darkness being the army of the self, it means that it extends just like an army. It extends. and it travels, and it goes. And so the heart has an army too. And the heart has an army that the self, the lower self has an army, just like the heart has an army that is light or certainty. And the lower self, the nafs, has an army. And that army extends with darknesses. And so there is a constant battle between the two. Some of the ulama who did sharh, commentary of this hikmah, they said there's a constant battle between them. The battle of what? Of listening to the light, or to the whispers, or to the thoughts that come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or comes from the realm of the angels. Those inner thoughts that come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala come from the angels in the form of ilham, in the form of warid that we talked about, something that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as opposed to the whisperings that come from the lower self. And the whispering that comes from the lower self are whisperings of the shaitan. They're the whisperings of the shaitan. And so these two are battling one another. They're battling one another in order to lay down what one should do. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants victory to the servant, when He grants success to the servant, what happens is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fills the person's heart with light. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fills the person's heart with light. So much so that it overpowers the darknesses of the lower self, the whisperings of the lower selves. It overpowers it because there's such certainty that has been built up in the servant, and the certainty of what? That it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that one should be doing things for. That it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that one should be doing actions for and deeds for. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That certainty helps, which is light. It helps to fight the whisperings, the darknesses that come from the lower self. So that one follows the light and one does not follow the darkness. One follows the light and one does not follow the darkness. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, however, when the servant is enraptured, and what is it that gives strength in the certainty? What are the things that brings about this strength? Is your worship. Your worship brings strength and increases certainty. Your worship and the things that you do, anything that you do, fulfilling the obligations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the things that are fard upon one, that are obligatory, mandatory to do. What also brings about certainty and increases that light from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your character, is your good nature, your disposition. If you have a good disposition and you work on becoming a person that is of good character, and you follow you challenge yourself to follow in the way of the Prophet ﷺ, who taught us about what good character is. He taught us how to act. He taught us about how to react. He taught us about how to be with people, how to be in a social gathering. He taught us about interactions between people. He taught us about interaction between our spouses. He taught us about interaction with children and with animals and so on and so forth. He taught us about these interactions in order for one to perfect one's good character, to perfect one's disposition, to perfect one's khuluq. And so, and to build it upon traits, to build it upon character is built upon traits, and built upon morals. Those are what characters are built upon. And so the light and certainty becomes stronger and becomes thabit, it becomes set. It becomes set. And it becomes rooted in the heart. It becomes rooted in the heart by fulfilling the obligations and by being a person who is of good character. Being a person of good character to everyone, not to particular people, but to everyone, and being humble. One of the factors of good character is humbleness. Is humbleness. So this builds the strength of certainty, which is the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When that occurs, then you're strengthening the light so that it can repel the darkness. It can repel the darkness. The darknesses are always going to be there. The darknesses will always be there. If one has to examine, so if one has transgressed against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the darknesses has overwhelmed the self. Meaning that one has allowed the lower self to act in accordance to that whispering, to those thoughts that came from the shaitan. One has allowed it to take, and it has overcome the light of the heart. It has overcome the army. Let's use the term he uses, rahmatullah alayhi. You have allowed the army of darkness to overcome and to defeat the army of light. You have allowed it to. And it could be because the strength of conviction is not there in the heart. Or it also could be that you have helped the darkness to spread by your senses. You have allowed the darknesses to spread. You have allowed your lower self to defeat the heart, to defeat the light because of the senses. What does it mean by the senses? That you've allowed yourself, if you examine, you've allowed yourself to listen or be in the company of people who speak ill or speak improperly, or you've allowed yourself to be in the company of people or in an environment that you see the haram consistently and you don't look away from it. You've allowed yourself to be in a place, or to be with people, or to be surrounded by things that strengthens the darkness, that strengthens the darknesses. And so the army of darknesses will certainly be strengthened and can lead to the defeat of the army of light that comes from the heart. And this is why suhbah is so important. The concept of companionship is so important. Why? Because it allows, the good companionship allows the heart that has light of iman and has light of certainty, it allows it to strengthen good suhbah, good companionship, good people to be around. It allows what? It allows the conviction to strengthen. And when that happens, then it can defeat the darknesses. Now, one can be fooled. One can be fooled by good companionship. One can be fooled, especially in social interactions. One can be fooled in it, that one may think that a socially acceptable way or matter, one may look at it that if it's acceptable by many people, and there's no crossing of the barrier, of what is into the haram. There's no crossing of the barrier or the border of what is haram. And it may be socially acceptable. However, if one takes a particular way, and one has grown up in a certain particular way, that way that one has grown up in has strengthened the light. It may be stricter than the other way. It may be stricter than the other way, and it may and both of them may conform to the Sunnah. Both of them may conform to what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala deems to be proper. If one grows up in a certain way, then one's heart has grown up with that light. One has grown up with that light and that certainty, based on that way that one has chosen to, or one's parents may have chose for one, or one's culture may have chose for one, or one's ethnicity may have chosen for one, the culture may have chosen for one, that's the particular way. And that is the way that has built certainty and light. When you entertain a change, when you entertain a change in that cultural perspective, or you entertain a change, you will allow darkness to overcome the light. You will allow it. Not because and it doesn't come because one has engaged in the haram. It's not because one has engaged in the haram. It's not. One has engaged in something that the certainty did not build up upon. That certainty did not build up upon. It did not build up upon. And so you may allow other extravagances against the shar to occur. I'll give you an example. Someone who is used to interaction, a culture who is used to interaction between men and women to a very minimal position, very minimal. Some cultures in the world is very minimal, the interaction between men and women, very minimal. It's not haram to be a group of men and to be in the same room. It's not haram when they're separated, or one is in one corner and one in the next corner. It's not haram. It's not haram to be in a grocery store with men and women. It's not haram. It's not haram, unless the purpose is to mix and talk. It's not haram. It's not haram when you enter into someone's house that you, in order to get to where the men are sitting or the women are sitting, that you pass by the family who may not look, you may not look, whatever. It's not haram. Some cultures are very strict according to it. And so you may enter into the house, like I've entered into the house of some of my teachers for 6 years, and I never saw anyone in their family. No one. I entered the house of some of my teachers for 6 years, and I don't know, I never saw any female of their family in that house, ever, never. That minimal interaction in cultures like that minimal interaction, if it changes the interaction to where it doesn't change to what is haram. It doesn't change to what is haram. Because there are, sometimes you have to engage and speak to women. Sometimes as men, you have to engage and speak to women. You do. Teachers have to speak to other teachers who may be female. Co-workers may have to speak. Someone who is running a certain thing or a certain matter that has in her hands. You may have to, just like in the time of the companions, if you grew up with non-interaction and non-engagement, but you switch to engagement, not that it's necessary, not that it was necessary, then you will allow yourself, the darknesses of the lower self will creep in. To do what? To take one further away and to engage in something that may not be of benefit. And so it may be that the thing that you are engaged in may be something that is, you may view as being okay, and it may be. It may be mubah, it may be something that is permissible, but you grew up in a stricter sense. You should keep to it, because your certainty and the light that was built in one's heart, built because of that particular aspect that you kept, and it should not be reversed or it should not go to the other way. It should not go to the other way. The army of the shaitan is always looking. The shaitan does not have to bring thoughts of evil to you to defeat the army of light. He does not. The shaitan can employ good thoughts to you to defeat the army of light. The shaitan does not have to whisper to you haram things to do. He doesn't. The shaitan can whisper to you good things, halal things, mubah things to do, because he wants to put you on the edge of walking between what is halal and what is haram. He wants to put you on the edge of what is mutashabiha. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, "Inna al-halal bayyinun wa inna haram bayyinun wa baynahuma mutashabihat," or baynahuma umura mutashabihat. There's two narrations. That the haram is clear and the halal is clear, and in between them are matters that are uncertain. Mutashabihat, that there's uncertainty or ambiguity. Mutashabihat, there are ambiguous matters, gray matters. The shaitan may not for you all. You pray, come to the masjid, you read Quran, you do dhikr of Allah. The shaitan's not going to come and tell you to do the haram, but he will tell you to do something mubah that you may have been strict upon, but you may relax on it to push you to the edge of what is permissible. That eventually, if he keeps pushing you out with good thoughts, mubah thoughts, that you eventually fall into the haram. This is the way of the shaitan. This is how darkness is spread. And it overcomes the light of certainty, or the light of knowing what is right. The light of knowing what is right. That's the light. Nur of the qalb is knowing what is right. The person came to the Prophet ﷺ to ask. He says, "Iftah qalbik." He says, take the matter to the heart. Meaning, come up with the answer in the heart. This heart, why did the Prophet ﷺ say that? This fatwa, "Iftah qalbik," is from the word fatwa. Seek it with the heart. Why? Prophet ﷺ says, seek it with the heart. He didn't say think about it. He didn't say, analyze it and so on. No, he says seek it with qalbak, your heart. Because if you go and you judge according to the heart that has light in it, that has not been overshadowed with darknesses of the lower self, then the heart will come with the matters that would be easy or will be better for one. May not be easier, but may be better for one. And so one always has to guard oneself. The best thing to do is to guard oneself. Guard oneself for what reason? Guard oneself so that the mubah does not push you to the edge of the sharia. That's why. Guard yourself against being pushed to the edge, to the border. Because if you get pushed to the border, then it could be that you fall into the haram. The closer you are to the edge of what is halal and what is haram, and you fall into mutashabiyat, the ambiguity and ambiguous things, you will be pushed. You can fall into the haram, in which case the darknesses will overcome. The darkness will overcome the light. The darkness will overcome the light. And you will find this. This is what you find. Someone may be spending years, may spend decades being a person of righteousness. Decades. The entire lifetime may be spent in righteousness and doing right. As soon as they allow themselves to be pushed to the edge, and culture allows it, these cultures allow it, Western cultures allow it, they allow you to open up the mubah. Fatwas today allow it. Fatwas today allow it to be pushed to the edge of what is mubah, what is permissible. If you allow yourself to fall into it, you are only spreading darknesses in yourself. That's all you're doing. You are spreading darknesses in yourself. You're allowing it, and you will eventually fall victim to it. Eventually you'll fall victim to it. You will fall victim to those darknesses if you allow it to occur. If you allow it to occur. And so one has to be strong. One has to be strong and resist. And then look and examine the situation, the environment, and where you're at. Look at it and examine it. Everyone has to save themselves. This is a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What I need to save myself may not what you need to save yourself. We're talking about practicing people here. I'm not talking in general. Everyone needs general things to save themselves. We need to pray. We all need, there's fard ayn that are upon us, all of us. I'm not talking about the general. I'm talking about the specifics. What you may need to save yourself is what I may not need. I may not need it. You may need I may need something that you don't need to save yourself. You may not need. Why? Because of culture. Because of a certain way, a strictness that we have. Could be something that we have. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Qu anfusikum nara," save yourself and save your family, you have to examine what is going to save you. I may be able to, Fulan may be able to live amongst people who have bad character, and it only increases them in good character. And that saves Fulan, that saves person A. Person B may be surrounded by people of bad character, and it leads to his destruction. It may lead to his destruction because he's susceptible to looking and seeing and acting in accordance to the people who are around him. Fulan A and Fulan B are different. What will save them are completely different things. Completely different things will save them. In the specifics, not in the general. Could be completely different what will save them. Completely different. One has to examine oneself. One always has to examine oneself. What will save you from the fire? In the specifics. The specific things. What will save you from the fire? And it differs. It differs. And so let the army of light save you, so that it can overcome the army of darknesses from the whispering of the lower self. The whispering of the lower selves. Because if you allow the lower self to whisper, then the lower self will gain in strength, and it will overcome the heart in all matters. And you will speak ill and you will do ill. Or you'll speak in a way and act in a way that you are not accustomed to from your growth and from your culture that may be strict. And all of what it leads to a lessening of what, and the lowering of what is your barriers. It will allow you, it will lower what you consider to be your line that you do not cross. And if you allow it to occur, then you will allow the lower self eventually to overcome the sense of what is certain and what you know to be true. And you will be blinded. And then you will fall into, eventually the person will fall into the haram. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us, guide us, forgive us, have mercy upon us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the strength of conviction. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the strength of worship. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to stay within the right and the truth, and help us to fight against that which is batil and what is untrue. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive and protect our elders, our parents, give them good health, long life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve us and preserve them on the deen. Those who have passed away, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them His mercy, His maghfirah and His shade. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our children, keep them on the straight path, make their footing firm in His deen. Grant them success in this world, grant them success in the next world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always guide us to what is true and what is right. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us away from wrong and what is oppressive. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help our brothers and our sisters faced with oppression, faced with difficulties, faced with obstacles. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove it from their path, secure them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help them. Those who are sick, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala heal them, cure them. Those who have passed away, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them His mercy and His maghfirah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us in knowledge and practice of our deen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alif bayna qulubina. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our homes from amongst the homes of the believers and make our last words our best words. Subhanaka wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk, wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.
Thank you for listening to The Hikam with Shaykh Zahir Bacchus. Help Seekers Hub spread the light of guidance to millions around the world by supporting us through monthly donations by going to seekershub.org/donate. Your donations are tax deductible in the US and Canada.